Alrighty, welcome everybody to Penco's virtual Pen and Penmanship Expo. We're kicking off our third and final weekend of amazing sessions, and we're starting off tonight with Elyce Longazelle, who is from the Hinze Pen Company. And what is your Instagram handle?
It's at Starry Night Resins.
Starry Night Resins. Thank you very much. And for those who don't know, Elyce is the mastermind behind all the amazing resins that come out of the Hinze Pen Company, except for the ones they buy, but the ones that come from in-house, Elyce is the mastermind. So welcome, Elyce, and welcome to Jim, who's hanging out camera, and we should see a time or two, I guess. I will turn things over to you. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we're excited to see what you got.
Oh, thank you. My name is Elyce Longazelle. I am a pre-K teacher during the day, during the school year. In my part-time, I do lots of, painting, watercolors, quilting. I sew pen pouches. Recently added polymer clay to the mix this week, and the resins that we've done. My very first foray into the resin pouring was with our blues pen that went with Patrick and Papier at Art of Orleans. And then I did the last St. Louis pen, which was the purple, the turquoise, and the hot pink. I did the macaw pen, our mermaid line, and I'm just kind of constantly adding things in as I go. Time is pretty busy. I do have a 12-year-old daughter, and we have a menagerie of pets. I'm a dance mom, and I'm also a graduate student working on my educational doctorate. So that's just a little bit about me. One of the things that I love about the resin is I love the colors. I love mixing colors. I love looking at the colors. The hardest part of pouring resin is waiting for them to come out of the pot so you can see what they look like. And of course, when you see the rods, they look completely different when you see the pen afterwards. So tonight we're going to go through the process of what it looks like to actually start with the colors and then go into the pouring of the rods, what the rods look like, and then we have a very special presentation of our Hinze pen that's going to go along with the St. Louis ink this year. So to get started, we started with the ink that Ken sent us a swatch for. So I looked at the ink and did a quick Google search to see what kind of green palettes there were available. I love Pinterest, Google, anything that has actual live photos of nature. It is generally the best places to find color. So as I was looking, I found a really pretty forest photo. It had some moss, it had some plants and leaves and some trees, which was just awesome. But then as I was scrolling a little bit further, I came across this picture and I asked permission to use it. It's from Stitch Palettes. They're an embroidery company. And so she had this wonderful picture with the palette that we're going to use tonight. And it's the inspiration for our pen. Here, babe, do you want to share that real quick?
Yes, of course. Hi, everybody.
So he is called the Curious Gecko. And he really spoke to us because of the bright turquoise and the orange along with the green. And the tree, I'm going to pull in a little bit later on after we do the resin. So he's our inspiration. There is an even better picture if you Google Curious Gecko. Off of Flickr, there's a really super cute photo of him as well. So if you want to do a scavenger hunt later, feel free. He's just adorable. Like I said, I am an animal lover. We do have 2 bearded dragons at home. I love my dragons. And so this little guy, when he popped up, we're like, yeah, we got to do this guy. So to start off, we have on the palette the 2 greens. We have the turquoise, we have an orange, and then the gold and the brown played off of the tree. So I left those two off, and I had an emerald green. Hey babe, you wanna do the? We're setting up the air conditioning, it's really hot. So I have emerald green mica powder that matched the bright green that's in the ink. And then we had 3 different greens that would have worked, but none of them by itself. So I took some of the forest green, some of the spruce green, and mixed those 2 together. And I actually used that green in our macaw pen, but there wasn't enough earthiness. So then I found a camo green that we had that I ended up mixing a little bit in. And it looks like that. And it ended up being a perfect match for the dark green when you swatched it with the darker, with more ink. So that's how I got the dark green. We have beautiful turquoise. Right there. And then we have a Phoenix orange that we used for the orange spots that went through the lizard. So that's our color palette that we're going to use today. So do we have any questions before I get started and pouring and all that?
There's no questions in chat yet. If anybody's got one to throw out.
Are all the colors powder, or is that a paste, or is it liquid?
They're all powders right now. We do have some of the liquid pigments, which are amazing to work with. I just poured one with some metallic liquid pigments that we'll be announcing hopefully later on. Those come from Divine Island. They are amazing. But today it's just all powders. They have a really good sparkle to them. So I kind of tend to steer more towards the powders than the other kind. So when we're pouring the resin, it all starts with weights. So we're looking for, in order to fill up, we're going to do 4 rods in 1 mold. It takes 300 grams of resin total. So there's a part A and a part B. When you mix the 2 together, they heat up, and the heat is what actually lets the colors set. So I would start with part A, and I do about 150, give or take, depending on how fast the resin comes spilling out of the bottle. I usually try to do about like 153 just to have some playing room. So that way we've got, if it starts to harden up a little bit faster, I've got just some extra to make sure I've got the holes filled up. So there's our A. And now we're going to do the B. The B is thicker. Thank you, babe. It's also very caustic. And so you have to put your gloves on.
You can develop an allergy over time to any resins. This happens to be a urethane resin. Epoxy resin also can cause some great anaphylactic reactions. So it's best just not to get it on you and be careful.
Okay, so part B, the B part is thicker than part A. So it looks like you don't have as much. That's why we're weighing everything on the scale. I also found out the hard way that you have to really wipe off the lid after you're done pouring, because it will make the lid stick to the bottle. And then Jim, with his big powerlifting muscle arms, has to open the bottles for me. Okay, so now we're done with the measuring. There's 2 ways that we can do the resin. One way is to do part A, part B, mix them together and then divide them out. Or you can divide them out first and then mix each color and then add the bees to each one. And then you have like 9 million cups in front of you, which is just kind of distracting to me. I prefer just to mix the two together and then divvy out and set up my colors. So we've got our 2 greens, our turquoise and our orange. So we've got 4 colors. So I'm gonna set out 4 smaller cups. What that does is it allows me the time to develop each color individually. And then as we get ready to pour into the mold, then I can just mix the colors as I go. Okay. Once I mix the 2 components together, we have exactly 12 minutes to be sure it's in the pot. And I found out that if it's super cold in the garage, it takes forever to set up because it delays that chemical reaction. And the same is true in the summer. I've been out here and it's been way early because the resin starts out hotter. So we end up keeping all the resin in the house until we need it, and then we bring it out to the garage. Okay, once we get the resin combined, we stir it for a good minute, minute and a half. What you want is for all of the parts to be mixed together and to ensure the good chemical reaction. And you're looking for the resin to be clear. You don't want a whole bunch of bubbles. When you put it in there originally, it's like there's ghosts in there. It gets real wispy looking. And the longer you stir it, then it clears up. Much like if you've ever made a strawberry pie with the jello and the pudding, it'll get real cloudy, and then all of a sudden as it boils, it just turns clear. It's kind of what this does. Okay. So as far as the 4 individual colors, I end up just eyeball, make sure we have enough in each cup. I know that there's going to be less orange and there's going to be less turquoise. So we're not going to pour as much into those 2 cups. The majority of the cups will be in the green because we want to highlight the green more than the other colors. So as we get to this part, we've got a little bit of just wait time to make sure that it's doing its thing and it's reacting. And now we get to do the fun part with the colors. So I'm going to start with the orange. And with the orange, you just need a little bit. I always just do like the very edge of the little stick, the craft stick. And as you stir, the resin then takes on the color of the mica powder. And because it's like a super fine powder, you have to be real careful because you end up leaving a trail of glitter everywhere you go because it's real sparkly and shiny. Okay, let's do turquoise. This one is a really pretty turquoise. This is from Fred and Tina, and it just looks beautiful. Caster's Choice, so I use for the Phoenix, and the Caster's Choice is also the one I'm using for the greens as we go. The bag gonna show them turquoise. That was like really pretty. Gonna show 'em?
Oh.
Pretty.
As we move to the greens, I've got a little bit more in one cup than I do the other. So I'm going to put the emerald, the brighter green, in the cup that has more. And then I'll put the darker foresty green in the other cup. I'm actually like they're already turning hot. I found that the Dollar Tree is like one of my very favorite places to get the little containers. So as I'm mixing my own colors, they go very nicely into the containers with the lids. Where are we at? Beeps. Okay, so we are really close. They're heating up a lot faster because it's so hot here. Okay. Okay, so when I pour, I found I like to do counts. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, dark green. The counting allows me to make sure that each of the rods is approximately about the same. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Rick is asking if it matters what sequence you pour the colors.
Only if you want to make sure that each rod is consistent.
Thanks.
What you don't see while she's doing this is she's got a recipe book, a little llama red book on there, which gives her the colors, the sequence to pour. Her counts are in there, so she knows what's going, and approximation of how much resin for each color in the cups. That way she can repeat it very quickly and easily. And for the next probably 3 to 5 minutes, it's going to be a rush to get these in the pot before they start to harden. So we'll let her count and do her thing. If there are other questions, I'll answer them for her.
Once we get towards to the top of the tubes, then it's just kind of fill up with what you've got left. Just to make sure each of the holes are filled all the way to the top. And what I try to do is keep the pattern going, but not necessarily worry about the count at that point. Okay, so all the holes are filled up. I have my magic tool. I slide it in. I'm gonna swirl, 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 make a big mess. I've ended up with resin on my phone, on my shirts, on my shoes, on the wall, sadly. We did learn not to pour resin around the dog because she got spastic, and then we ended up resin on the carpet. It was quite horrible. Okay. Thank you, Bella. Okay, so then once the resin is all in the tubes, it goes in the pressure pot. And then once we get the pressure set, you'll hear the compressor maybe go on. It has to go under pressure. It's much like an Instant Pot. Creates the pressure. However, on these, there's no heat element, but it creates an air pressure. What that does is it allows all the air bubbles that are created from mixing all the resins to get eliminated from the mix.
Michelle's asking about a pen that she purchased last year. She thinks it has a bad converter. So she's wondering where she can get a replacement.
Always knows better.
Jim said to call him and he'll get her another one.
Well, thank you.
Uh-huh. That's an easy fix.
I've got a quick question. So
Yes.
how many prototypes on average would you go through before you decide, hey, this is the right blank, this is the one? Because you talked about the research, the gecko, how many different samples did you have to produce before you came up with one that you thought was good?
The one last year, I think I did 2 iterations of it because the first time it wasn't enough of the darker purple. So I think there were like 2 rounds of that one. This one actually is the very first one. So I poured it, it came out, I was like, yes, because you could tell where the spacing of the orange was in comparison to the turquoise. And so what I was looking for was the turquoise sticking along the belly of the lizard and then the spots of orange along his back. So I wanted there to be spacing between the oranges and the greens and then allowing the turquoise to kind of sit in the middle. With the stir stick, then you're able to swirl and get different patterns. The macaw pen that we did, that was a one-time. I kind of visualized where I wanted the colors to go. And instead of doing swirls, I just took the dipstick, I went straight down, pulled it up, wiped it, and that gave that streak look like it had feathers. So the magic tool is really just a coat hanger with a little bit of an L on the end. And that L scrapes the sides and it creates the swirls when you go back and forth. I don't know, did anybody see the pen from Chicago Pen Company that was just released this week? It was a Galaxy kind of series called Geo. I poured the resin for that. That one took, I think, 3 or 4 attempts. It was 4 attempts to make sure we have the right pattern, the right balance of colors, and that kind of thing. So Jim was talking about the notebook. So here's my trusty notebook. In here, I've got all of the different recipes for the resins with the names and everything. So any other questions?
Rick is asking, is it positive pressure which collapses the bubbles or vacuum which allows them to be pulled out?
It's positive pressure, and what it does, it shrinks the bubbles so they're microscopic or not visible. You can't really cast this under vacuum. With epoxy, if you're quick, you can use vacuum to suck out air bubbles before you pour, and then not require pressure. But with these resins, it's positive.
Okay, so what will happen is the rods sit in the pressure pot for about 2 hours. We usually let them go 3 or 4 hours just to make sure that they're good. And then when they come out, they look like this. You wanna hold them up? So as you see the rods, when they come out, you can see the blocks of color. You can see the 2 different greens. You can see the orange. You can see the turquoise kind of mixed in there. And what I was looking for when they come out is there an equal distribution of the green throughout, and is the orange in different spots. So by doing the counts, once I started introducing the orange, I went back to counts of 5 to give more spacing for the colors. And then Mr. Gill has already done 2 of our limited edition pens that are going to get introduced tonight. And it's the Curious Gecko.
Those are beautiful.
And those
Ooh,
are then
green.
finished and polished and ready to go.
Yeah, 2 colors in the nibs.
So we've got 2 colors in the nibs. One is like just a regular green, and then we've got an emerald green. The emerald is up there right now. And then the green will be the other nib. So as we were planning this pen, I wanted it to look like the gecko sitting in the tree. So Jim was asking what color clip do we want, everything. And I said, I really like him to be sitting on a tree. So I have created a little pen pillow that looks like a tree.
Mm.
And then the pen will sit in the little pen pillow, looking like the gecko sitting in the tree. So each of the pens will come with, if you choose the bottle of ink, and they will come with a pen pillow and the pen, and you can choose the nib. We're offering, what was it, 10 with the ink and then 10 without. So 10 with the ink, 10 without the ink, you don't need the bottle of ink, but they will all come with the pen pillow as well.
Awesome. Very, very creative. I like the pen pillow. That's cool.
We have time. Ken, you wanted this to run about an hour, right?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
You wanted this to run about an hour, correct?
You know, that's kind of what we're shooting for, but you know, if we end a little sooner or a little later, that's fine too. Find a
Why
natural.
why don't you pour back your Magic Mermaid?
Do what?
Why don't you pour back your Magic Mermaid?
I could do that.
Or Arabian Nights to show the layering.
Oh,
What do you want to do?
let's take a poll. What do you guys want to see, the Magic Mermaid or the Arabian Nights?
And let's see if I can. So,
Oh, here's it.
so for reference, Arabian Nights
Cool.
or Magic Mermaid, which is mostly white ghost and then a hint of really dark purple under the hood.
We've got 1 vote for Arabian Nights.
I go for Arabian Nights.
Yeah, it looks like the Arabian Nights is running away with it. So
Okay, that will work. Okay,
What do you need?
let's see.
and while you're looking that up, Teresa's got a quick question. What happens to the prototype blanks that don't make the grade?
They get put in the practice
bin.
basket.
I have a couple of apprentices that need material that we can waste or use easily for mistakes.
Cool.
Midnight purple, lavender, pink. Oh, and our mustard gold.
A question for Jim. How much, what is the difference between the mold diameter and the average pen diameter? Is it, are you taking it down 10 thousandths or more, or what?
Oh, quite a bit more depending on the pen. The mold produces a 3/4 round blank. For like my big Avancios, they're about 18 mil on the cap, so that doesn't come down too far. maybe 70 thousandths. For my average pen, it comes down 170 thousandths on the body, sometimes more. But the more layers you remove, the better the swirls.
So for the Arabian Nights, I don't know if you guys have heard the story about the Arabian Nights. My daughter is 12. She's a ballroom dancer. She's a competitive ballroom dancer. She was on Google somewhere, and I think she was looking at ballroom dresses or something, but she ended up finding pictures of just different sunsets. And so she came across this Arabian Nights picture, and she said, "Hey, I really want to do a pen. Can we do this?" And so I looked at the picture, and I was like, "Yeah, we can do that." And we went outside to pour the resin. Jim came out to help us get it in the pot. And he's used to me doing lots of swirls and stuff. And he said, "Okay, well, aren't you going to swirl?" I said, "No, I don't want it swirled because I want that ombre effect to go from dark all the way up to the gold up at the top." And when we put him in the pot, he was like, "I don't know about this. This is really strange. It's not going to work out. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens." They came out of the pot. They were absolutely gorgeous. And it's been one of our best sellers, especially at the pen shows. We were at Triangle a couple weeks ago. Francisco was saying, he's like, "We need to have the Aladdin song come out and sing every time someone says, 'Oh, show me the Arabian Nights.'" At that point, Jim was like, "Okay, I'm out. You guys are nuts."
There's a question. Is there a story behind the mermaid line?
Oh, the mermaid blanks. Yes. So we were doing one of the pens, and we had a bunch of leftover colors mixed up. And again, Natalie was like, "Oh, we could do the one, well, let's add some pink to it because we don't have very much stuff with pink." And so it's like, okay, so we were just playing, and this was pretty early on with me pouring resin. So we poured it in there, swirled it up, and they came out and they were beautiful. It was the Majestic Mermaid. Was that the first one, babe? Or the Marvelous? It has pink and blue and purple, very girly colors. And when they came out, Natalie said, "Oh, that looks like a mermaid." I'm like, "You're right." We ran it by Francisco, and he's like, "Oh, it'd be so cool to have one for each seven seas." So being the teacher that I am, I like having names with the same letter than the alliteration. So I was like, "Oh, we could do like the Marvelous Mermaid and the Mysterious Mermaid." And then we came up with the Magic Mermaid because of the ghost powders. You don't really see the color, and you have to turn it a certain way. So we said that was the Magic Mermaid. So Natalie has been very instrumental in picking colors, finding photos for me. And then between her and I, we just kind of come out and play and see what happens, see what comes out of the pot. So I've just combined parts A and B. This one, because I want all of the colors to be the same, I'm going to make sure that there's 4 equal parts. I've also found that these big solo cups, or the hefty cups that we're using, with the thin walls, work a whole lot better than, say, the Chinette ones with like all the little divots and everything, because it's much easier to scrape down and make sure you've got all the resin out. And then for the smaller cups, I just have these like Chinette cheapo ones from Costco. But we also like the coffee cups that are more paper based because they fold and it's easier to pour them in the tubes. Hey babe, can you spray me one of the molds? The spray allows the rods to come out easier because you have to break the seal once they're done and then shoot the compressed air inside it and they end up shooting out, which I found out the hard way. They little tend to fly across the garage. You have to be like really careful.
Is there a draft on those molds for each of the rods?
Is there a what?
A draft, which means is they're not uniform all the way down. It's, you know.
Oh, no, they're uniform.
Yeah, they're uniform. They're all the way down. And so the compressed air shoots down along the inside and shoots them out.
Is there a release agent on the inside of the mold?
Yes, that's what Jim just sprayed.
Okay.
It's called Stoner.
And it actually increases the life of the molds. Those molds are rather expensive. And they do have a lifespan. You get about 80 casts out of them.
So the pink is actually a color that I created. We had this really hot pink color from Eye Candy Pigments called Pachinko, and it was just really too like dark and bright. So I mixed some white and got the right color pink for us. And I love this purple at the bottom. These are going hot again.
They're very hot.
Okay, let me get this in and
This is about 93, 92, 92.
so what we're looking for is for the resin to be about 96 degrees,
This one's 100, of course.
which will keep the colors separated. If you pour them too early, the colors just end up mixing together. Okay, so then this one, I'm just gonna count. I'm gonna use up each color. And because I don't want to come back to these, I just end up filling up with whatever resin I have for that color. So versus that, then the lavender. we have the pink will go in.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to hold the compressor. All right, folks, we're gonna have a lot of noise here for a minute. So if you want to turn down your headsets or your volume, might be advisable.
It is very loud. The dogs go nuts.
But we're not gonna have enough pressure if I don't do this. So apologies ahead of time.
Oops. Okay. So the reason I didn't do the coat hanger thing with the Arabian Nights is I didn't want the swirls. So as you're layering, as you add more, they kind of mix on their own, like right where they combine, but it creates a really nice ombre effect from the top to the bottom. And that one, when it came out, Jim was asking, he's like, well, which is the top, which is the bottom, where's the cap gonna go? I'm like, the gold needs to be the cap, like, so that way he's cutting them in the right order, making it look like the sunset. So any other questions, comments?
I've got a question. So earlier on, you were saying how, sometimes you get a rod and it doesn't really look like much, but then when you turn it down, it kind of reveals the inner beauty of the mix and it looks really great. Have you ever had the opposite happen where you pull the rod out of the mold and you're like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And you turn it down and it's like, oh my God, this is a disaster.
Yeah, and in fact, I was practicing on one of them where I ended up having to do a couple, and the layering didn't work. So I had way too much of one color at the bottom. I was expecting that to get swirled more up, and it just did not work. Like we pulled it out, I was like, oh man, those look great. But once you turn the pen, depending on where you cut, there just ended up being this lot of like white space at the bottom. It just really looked lopsided. I was like, okay, yeah, that doesn't work. So the colors may look really good, but then the swirls don't look right, or you get too much swirls or not enough swirls, and it all has to do with the layering and making sure you've got a good vision in your head of what you want that rod to look like once it's turned down.
In that same vein, do do you do a pre-cut to see how it looks, or do you have to go all the way down to the finished product before you say go, no go?
He'll do a pre-cut, and that usually, just by taking off just a little tiny bit, you can begin to see the swirls. The longer I've been doing this, the easier it's for me to see if it's gonna work or not. I poured one, is based on a dog. Somebody sent me pictures of their dog, which is super cute. But the first round, when the rods came out, I was like, nope, it's not what I want. It was too brown heavy, and it was not sparkly enough. So even with the beginning shavings, I was like, no, we're repouring that, because it just, the mix wasn't right. And I ended up brushing that one. So redid it. The second batch turned out a whole lot nicer. And the pink and the brown were right where I wanted them. So that ended up working. So a lot of it's just trial and error, because even if you pour it in the same way, the next day, depending on the humidity, whatever, your mood, the pressure pot, they all factor in. It's a very organic process. So once you mix the colors, you get them in the pot, there's really nothing you can do outside of just turn them into a pen or send them to the practice bin, you know.
How many, what was the PSI on the pots? How high is it running?
60.
60 PSI?
60. Yeah.
Okay.
And they sit in there for about 3 hours or so, and they can sit in there longer, you know, but 2 hours, 2.5 hours is about the minimum that you want them to sit.
Do you ever pour more than 4?
I do, depending on the pen. So if you've seen the latest Mulan Disney release from the live action Mulan, there's a phoenix that flies with Mulan as she goes off to war. And the phoenix kind of swoops through the mountains. It's a beautiful phoenix. It's reds and oranges and purples and blues and greens. So I actually have a phoenix pen that I think, babe, is it on the Hinze pen site yet? So it's no, not yet. So it's the phoenix. It's got 7 colors that I did. It was my first 7-color pour. And I started with a little teeny tiny bit of black at the bottom. So it's like the colors rising from the ashes. And that one just turned out just amazing.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that you have with trying to pour and get them in the pressure pot before they start to set?
The biggest challenge is making sure that the area is clear enough so I'm not knocking stuff over. And that's where, when I started with just the A and B and mixing it all together, it cleared up a whole lot of space. So when I had all the A cups and then all the B cups and then all the mica powders, it was just a hot mess. So I've just kind of refined and limited the cups, and that seems to have gone a lot quicker. Also, having the coat hanger, this sounds silly, but the coat hanger, because resin will build up on it over time, it will get stuck to the mat. And so like you're trying to get all the resin in, and then you grab this and it's like stuck to the mat. You're like fighting with it, trying to get it into the tubes to do the swirls. Mm-hmm. And then also, if you pour too much into the holes when you go to swirl, the resin will like overflow like a volcano. So making sure that you're not getting resin on your hands and in the pot and just kind of everywhere. So those are the 3.
We have a question from the chat. Rick Leeson, pardon me if I butchered it. It's fascinating to watch artisan pen makers processes like this in large, high-volume companies. It's a process basically similar, but just more highly automated.
Unmute yourself.
Oh, there we go. That works good. Okay. So for high volume shops, they'll likely use a different resin. They'll use a polyester based resin or an acrylic acetate. which lends itself to injection molding and automated processes. A lot of the resins used by, say, like Edison, their stock lines are all acrylic acetate. And the injection molding is computer controlled so that the blanks are identical across the board. And they do a really good job that way. But it's a much different product than what the artisan makers use and come up with. Companies like Diamond Cats, it's not necessarily more automated. He's got tools to assist with things. So we poured 300 grams of resin here into 4 molds. He deals with like 20 times that in a single pour. So he's got like a $14,000 Vortex mixer. Puts part A and B in there, clicks a button, and 30 seconds later, the whole batch is mixed. And then he can split it up into large buckets, add pigments as needed, and do his pouring system, which is quite frankly kept secret. When
But
it comes to
it was good to see though that he had the hefty cups and the little solo cups, you know, all the stuff that I use as well for like little teeny tiny batches. He had those too, so just interesting.
Well, I noticed you taking the temperature of the solution with an IR thermometer. What is the time window that you have and the temperature that you're looking for? I mean, you know, let's say it's 100 degrees and you get at 100, you get 5 minutes, or if it's 120, you get a half a minute or something. I don't know.
So what I do is I set the timer automatically for 12 minutes once I combine A into B. So it's 12 minutes total. What I found is that on a normal day, I'm pouring into the molds at about 4 minutes left. Okay. Today, they were going at about 6 minutes left just because it's so hot outside and it's just hotter here, so that it sped up the reaction. In February, when we had the snowpocalypse, I was pouring at, I want to say it was like 15 minutes or so, just because it slowed down the process so much. And then I couldn't even get up to the 96. I would get to about 88 and it was already getting thick. So I just went ahead and poured it. They turned out fine, but it's a matter of paying attention to the temperature, the feel of it, and then also how viscous the liquid is. If it's like getting really, really thick, if it's getting too watery, like you can tell the more you do it, what is going to work and what's not going to work. So.
Michelle's got a question. She wants to know if there's situations where the excess resin builds up so you could use it like Fordite.
Jim to say yes.
Yeah, so if you over pour, and I used to do this when I poured prior to her, I'd keep a cup or like one of those quart soup takeout things from a Chinese restaurant. And whenever I had leftover resin, I just pour it in there. And that would end up being like a pepper mill or a bowl or a cup or something else that I would use. There's nothing quite like Fordite. Such an interesting name that they call that. And I worked at Ford for many years and did a lot of projects in paint shops. God, all the money I could have made had I just went in there and chipped away.
Here, you want to show them this? This is the Phoenix.
Okay.
So this is the Phoenix pen I was telling you about with the 7 colors.
Oh.
You'll notice the black towards the bottom, and then it goes up to the lighter colors, like to the sky, up in the blues and purples and greens.
Nice. Dave says he loves it.
Thank you. That one's my favorite so far. It's just, it came out of the pot. I was like, yay.
Have you ever had a resin that you poured where you were expecting, like you were trying to follow a recipe, you thought it was going to come out a certain way, something went wrong or you missed a step or whatever, it came out completely different, but you said, hey, this is awesome anyway, and we'll keep it and we'll give it a new name and run with it?
Yeah, actually, there was, so I was basing one of them on the Magic Mermaid. And so I had taken a class with Zach Higgins on doing the faux abalone. And I wanted to try one of Braxton's from Divide Island. He's got a pigment called sangria, and it's like this really deep, winey purple color. It is stunningly gorgeous. So I thought, well, I can do the faux abalone using the sangria instead of the black. And okay, so this is the faux abalone, and it's got swirls of black, but then it's got the ghost pigment. So depending on how you turn it, you can see the red, the green, and the blue. So I poured the magics and I substituted the sangria for the silver. And once I put it in there, I was like, I don't know how it's going to turn out. This is the rod. I called it raspberry cheesecake. And I loved it. At the top seemed really, really dark, but I think overall it's going to be a beautiful pen once it gets done.
Yeah, those colors look nice together. Cool.
Yeah. So, and then naming them just goes by kind of whatever I'm feeling at the moment. Here's one of the last ones I did. Oh, I moved from over here. So we had our purple people eater that I did that was hugely successful. Somebody asked, well, can you do it in yellow? So I poured all of our yellows that we have. And so I posted the colors on Instagram, and I was like, if you've seen Harry Potter, the very first one, he does a spell and it says sunshine daisy, something mellow, turn this stupid fat rat yellow. And so I took a version of that and said sunshine daisies limoncello for that one. So.
Cool. Jennifer asks, what was the first resin pour that you did where you felt confident that you could get close to reproducing the color effects between the batches?
The blues.
The blues. Yeah, Jim helped me with that one. But it was like each time, it was like, no, we've got to do the silver in the middle. And it was just a member of remembering. But then the macaws, when I did that one, once it came out, I was like, that's it. Yeah, I mean, it was just stunningly perfect. So it was just a matter of layering the right colors in the right order and then swooping it. So.
Cool. And Sandra asks, I'm sure you get requests for custom blanks to match school team colors. What's the oddest thing you've been asked to base a blank on or use as an inspiration?
Probably the dog so far. We haven't had much for school colors or anything. But I'm also, because I'm in graduate school, I'm not doing a whole bunch of like big orders. So as we get orders coming in for custom orders, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, I can do that. I've had a lot of fun with the dog one, just because the colors of the dog are just beautiful. He's a beautiful dog. So I'm waiting for that one to get finished, for sure. And that's really one of the hardest parts, is waiting from the time they come out of the pot, because they still have to cure once they come out of the pot. So they have to cure for 3-4 days. And then they get put into the pipeline of the order of pens that are being done. So there'll be a couple where I'm like, hey, did you finish this one? You know, 'cause I'm waiting to see what the actual pen is going to be. That happened with the geckos this week. It was like the rod came out. I was like, yes, we got it. And then today he was like, okay, you ready? Here you go. I was like, yes, it looks perfect. So.
Awesome. Do the rods have like a shelf life where do the properties change over time to where they at some point become unusable? I thought I had heard somebody mention that they will get more like harder and more brittle, but I'm not sure what material they were using.
With Alumalag, I've not had that problem yet. of course, we don't have rods stay around for very long. Polyester resin over time gets very, very hard and brittle. Ebonite will also get hard and brittle, but that's not something we would necessarily pour. Epoxies will yellow over time and can potentially change color. But I haven't seen anything go south, really. If anything, the mix wasn't right, the proportion of A and B was off, and you end up getting a very soft, unusable rod that no matter how long you sit, it'll never cure.
Interesting. Thanks. So we're out of questions in the chat. Anyone want to jump in with some more questions?
So the Curious Gecko pens are available on the Heinz Pens website. We are expecting to ship them between the 15th and the 23rd of July. So if you order one tonight, it is a pre-order because we just poured one of the last batches of rods today, and they give us time to cure them and get all the pens out. So.
Cool. And I just put the link to the pen in chat.
Oh, yay.
And Michelle's asking
when the Phoenix will be available.
Yeah.
When I take pictures of it and post it, we're actually leaving for vacation tomorrow. The first one in 3 years for us, 4 years for us. So when I get back, we'll get. I've got 60 or 70 pens that we took to St. Louis that I need to take pictures of and get on the website.
For the Raleigh show, we took, what was it, 111 pens to Raleigh. And yeah, I was polishing, my daughter was polishing, Jim was polishing, you know. It's like we had lathes going everywhere, you know, getting ready to go.
All right. Well, it seems like we're out of questions. Do you have any last words to share with us or anything you want us to know before we wrap up?
No, thank you for having me. It's been so much fun doing this today. Follow me on Starry Night Resins at Instagram. And then always check out Heinz Pens too, because we're obviously linked. So that's about it.
Right.
And
Excellent.
if you get Pen World, check out the article this month. They were kind enough to feature us in the magazine. It's our first time, so we're rather excited about it.
Congratulations.
Page 60 in the article, in the magazine.
That's awesome. All righty. Well, thank you, Elyce, and thank you, Jim. This was fantastic. It was awesome getting to see, you know, the whole behind the scenes operation here, and your work is amazing. You know, we've got lots of fans in the St. Louis area of your work. So thank you so much for sharing your craft with us, and have an awesome vacation.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
All right. And thanks everybody for joining tonight.